GG Allin might be one of my favorite human beings alive, which makes no sense because he died in 1993. But he's a fascinating character, a wacky individual, and someone that you would never want to meet in person, but want to pull out your binoculars and stare at for hours and hours and hours. GG Allin, otherwise known as Kevin Michael Allin, born Jesus Christ Allin, was a punk rock musician who made many tunes that the whole family could enjoy. I would be flabbergasted if you hadn't heard of some of his biggest hits. Let me name some of the songs that he came out with for you here, and you can tell me if you've heard of them. I know you have. Some of his popular hits include I Fuck the Dead, Needle Up My Cock, I Wanna Fuck Myself, Fuck Women I've Never Had, Kill the Children, Save the Food, I Wanna Piss on You, Drink from the Pissing Snake's Mouth, Kill the Police, I Kill Everything I Fuck, and Suck My Ass It Smells, to name a few of the great hits that you'd hear in the 80s, 90s, and today that came from this man's catalog. GG Allin's entire shtick was to be the most reprehensible human being on the planet. He tried his entire life to be unlikable and completely degenerate. Wonderful feats of majesty that occurred during his live shows included stripping naked on stage, vomiting while on stage, taking a shit while on stage, scooping up that shit with his hands and throwing it into the audience, running into the audience and fist fighting the audience, drop kicking random passersby outside of the venue, screaming in people's ears, which doesn't sound that bad by comparison, but he had like audio equipment, so it was really loud. That would have been annoying. And destroying every piece of property from the venue he could get his hands on. So before we dive into more of the wacky shit that this man committed in his life, let's talk a little bit about the history of what formed GG Allin to be the way he was. His father was an abusive religious maniac. He would often tell his family that Jesus spoke directly to him, which is why GG Allin was originally named Jesus Christ Allin. He would dig graves in the family cellar and take them down in the middle of the night and say, "You see that? Those are going to be filled by your bodies if you don't worship my Lord." His father essentially considered any and all pleasure a sin and kept the family in complete isolation. His mother tried to get a divorce from his father at some point, but his father willed her back by kidnapping GG and holding him ransom. This inevitably led to him growing up as a street rat, committing a bunch of crimes, stealing a bunch of drugs, using those drugs that he stole, and being a big old rebellious rapscallion. Fast forward to the 80s and GG Allin is trying to make it as a punk rock musician. He's doing everything right. He's addicted to alcohol and playing music that everyone hates. But because of his upbringing and the kind of person that he is, he's taking it to the next level, escalating things, if you will. In 1985, GG Allin decided to shake up the world of punk rock, and no, I don't mean playing more than 3 chords. He bought a huge amount of X-Lax and pounded them all before a show, thinking it would be funny if he had to take a shit the entire time. But take a shit he did, as he shit on the floor of the stage and caused absolute mass panic at the venue. It was then that GG Allin knew his calling and made defecation and shitting a regular part of his balanced breakfast. While not perfectly wading in the shit pool that was coming to him later in life, GG Allin was beginning to find his element, and he often ended up in the hospital for drug-related problems or constant broken bones and other injuries from flailing around like a maniac during his shows. GG Allin is a man who threw himself a birthday party. And his friends asked, "What do you want for your birthday, GG Allin?" And GG Allin said, "I want a hooker to piss in my mouth." So his friends filmed a hooker pissing in his mouth, and according to one of them, he was, and I quote, "a very happy boy." Now, I don't want to box the man GG Allin in as a one-trick pony. He was always trying to outdo himself. GG Allin made a promise in 1989 that on his Halloween show, he would kill himself live on stage. Didn't happen. Now, some of you watching out there might be, wow, what a pussy. What a guy who just wants attention. I can't believe he didn't go through with it. He only didn't do it because he was in prison at the time. And subsequently was in prison on Halloween for every year following that until his actual death in 1993. How did he die? Heroin. Not surprising. He was also covered in blood and feces at the time. Also not surprising. He was performing a show in 1993 that got so rowdy that the venue completely cut the power. GG Allin, already incredibly intoxicated and covered in blood and shit, decided to wander the streets with all of his fans just doing whatever they wanted, until eventually they wound up at one of his friends' houses and decided to have a makeshift party where he overdosed on heroin. Now, this party happened during the night. You know, he had just finished playing a show and decided to go hang out. His body wasn't discovered until the next morning when one of the partiers went, "Oh, GG Allin's not passed out, he's dead." That's how hard in the paint this guy went. GG Allin fans respected GG Allin's passing by treating his body the way that he treated it on stage. They didn't let a mortician touch it. and it bloated up like crazy. They then adorned a leather jacket on it as well as a jockstrap and wrote on his body with markers and graffitied it. His funeral turned into a party that had no order whatsoever, with people constantly posing with the corpse and pouring whiskey in all of its holes. And eventually they finally got around to burying him. And his tombstone was frequently desecrated with urine, alcohol, cigarettes, and feces. To the point where his mother had to beg fans to stop, and his tomb was eventually removed from the cemetery because of this. There's a great documentary of all this called Hated, GG Allin and the Murder Junkies, if you want to see all this actual footage yourself. I think you're even able to rent it on YouTube. But don't worry, this documentary didn't have the signature GG Allin touch. He was invited to a screening of it where he showed up heavily intoxicated until he began throwing beer bottles at the screen. Then he started launching beer bottles at the audience until he eventually smashed one over a woman's head and had to run before the cops came. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you first heard me talk about this on the official podcast, aka the greatest podcast on earth. I'll go ahead and link that in the description. And if you want to hear me talk about more dumb, stupid shit that I know way too much about, you can check out my streams that are linked in the description. I also like video games, just like you. I'm relatable. So the next time you're listening to melodious jams like Outlaw Scumfuck and I Wanna Fuck Myself, at least now you'll know a little bit more about the man who made them.